So, Will, you are a guy who has spent many years, I'm not calling you old, I'm just saying you're experienced, doing things differently. I typically find that there's a correlation with people who do something different, and there's a story, there's a why, there's a passion behind it. What would you say your why is?
Yeah, I think, kind of looking back early on, I was a broker for a long time and had a number of self-funded groups, and one group in particular that, every year, it didn't matter how well we did with their renewals, it was never good enough. And so came across this idea of reference-based pricing, and I've told the story a lot of times, but one of the things that I always say is the first time I heard this as a broker, my exact thought was, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. There's no way that's going to work. And we gave it a try, and I told the group that, look, I had no idea if this is going to work or not, but we do know that if we stay where we are, we know what we're going to get.
Right.
So why not give it a try? And so that's what we did. And one of the things I tell brokers all the time is once you see the numbers on your own group, you can't unsee that.
Right.
And then it does make a difference in how you do everything else. So I think from my perspective, when I first saw the math of it, where we're spending, 66% of billed charges in a network, and now with no network, it's 33% of billed charges. And once you see those numbers for yourself on your own group, it's then very difficult to go in and sell a Blue Cross fully insured plan or whatever it may be.
Right.
And so I think that was a big part of the change in my mindset as to, kind of the difference that made. And then you're at the point where you're like, you know what, I actually can make a difference for not only the employer, but their employees. I mean, let's look at what's really going on out of the marketplace. Most employee plans, they're terrible. I mean, $5,000 deductibles with guys that are making $18 an hour. I mean, come on, that's not cool.
Right.
And we can fix that.
Yep.
And I think that's a big part of what we're doing.
So, and I love it because, we're at a themed superhero thing. It's the Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility, right? So you've had lots of conversations with employers, with brokers. You know what works. What's that thing? Is it, what's something that you're like, take it to the bank, I'll double down all day long?
Yeah. I think that the mistake, I'll start with that. The mistake that most brokers make is they don't make the connection to the employer. And I always think about my own journey from that first thought that this is never going to work to I leave my brokerage practice to go, do RBP, right? So that's a huge leap from where I was. Well, the progression of that, I think, is something that most brokers don't think about helping their employer through. And so if you think about, if you're an employer, you're a CFO, CEO, whatever, and you've been buying health insurance for 20 years, all you've ever heard is the only way for us to really save money is to have a better discount in our network, right? That's what we have to do. Well, that becomes then a very closely held belief. And if you don't dismantle that a little bit, if you jump right into talking about reference-based pricing, you've left your employer kind of in the dust.
Right.
They're still stuck with, wait a minute, I thought we
You've
were
been
talking
telling
about
me,
people.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
So one of the things that I know works, and presumably works fairly well, I mean, it's not like I don't sell RBP all the time, One of the things that works apparently is to spend a little bit of time as to some of the problems that you as a CEO or a CFO just don't know about as it relates to your PPO contract. So just to give you for example, if you are in a PPO, you've obligated yourself and your employees and your plan to the terms and conditions of that PPO contract.
Which you've never seen before.
Which, by the way, you never get to read and nobody does. Well, just one of the simple provisions that I always point out is that there's a provision in there, it's called a no audit provision. Hospital is essentially saying, we'll give you a discount off of our billed charges, but you have to agree not to audit the claims we send. Now, if a CEO hears that, by the time I'm done with that narrative, they're so upset, they'll do just about anything to fix that.
Whatever the office.
Right, and because the whole point is that nobody likes being taken advantage of. And I think that sale has to happen before everything else can move,
100%.
can, you know, progress forward.
So you've had a lot of conversations. Not all of them are successful. So the reality of it is there's still that message that needs to happen. If you're sitting in front of an advisor, an employer right now, what would you tell them?
You mean about the
About how to-
reasons things are not going to sell? Is that what you're saying?
Or no, or like, what would you tell them? What's the advice you give them? What's your elevator pitch, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, you know me from being from Louisiana.
It better be a long elevator.
Yeah, it's
A
got to be a
long
long
elevator.
elevator ride. So no, I don't do elevator pitches very well. You know, I would just tell any broker out there, any producer or, you know, consultant. I mean, your goal is to do the best right thing that you understand how to do for your client. I mean, that's what you're there to do. And whatever that may be, if it turns out to be reference-based pricing, in my opinion, the next thing that you then have to do is focus in on the partners that are going to make that work. You're obviously the RBP vendor, the TPA, your stop-loss carrier, your PBMs. I mean, all those things are big parts of it. And I think doing, you know, vetting each of those vendors to where you're comfortable with what they're going to do, and everybody that's in the process understands the process.
Yep.
That's what you should be doing as a consultant.
Awesome. Well, thank you for leading change. Thank you for being one of those guys that's okay being a salmon or a crawfish or whatever you guys say in your neck of the woods. But thank you, buddy.
All right, thank you.